Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program.
One of the hardest things to manage in subscriptions is consumption. Basically, how much somebody orders and how much they use of your product. If you're selling coffee, supplements, something that people take at different cadences, it can be really, really hard. And this is one of the number one contributors to churn because people either end up with too much product or not enough product. And when they don't have enough, they go and find it on Amazon or at a local store. I'd like to introduce you to a new solution in the subscription game that is fixing all of that called Bottomless. Bottomless is a software and scale that people use at home to be able to manage how much they're using of something. Bottomless scale will sit on your counter. You can put the coffee bag on it, and that scale will track how much is left in the bag and trigger a reorder when things are getting low. The system is fully automated, and the best part is that you can run it in tandem with your subscription app or use it all alone as its own subscription experience. If you have a problem with consumers not knowing how much to use, having too much product, or having to reorder too many times, I highly suggest you look at Bottomless and find out more about how they're transforming the subscription experience. Hello, and welcome to another dose of Subscription Prescription, the podcast where we try to help you figure out everything related to D2C subscriptions. I am very excited for today's dose because I am joined by Micheal Meyer, the co-founder and CEO of Bottomless. Micheal, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Matthew. I'm excited to be here. Really stoked to talk about subscriptions.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be talking about, I think, one of the biggest problems in the subscription space today, and that has to do with replenishment. That has to do with the idea of people have too much product or not enough product. There's innovations happening across the board when it comes to making sure you're getting on the right frequency and what happens if you're getting too much or too little. Micheal, you guys have a pretty interesting solution to this. Before we get too much into the solution, let's talk through some of the problem, though, as we were talking a little bit offline. Why don't you help for everyone listening or watching unpack the problem related to replenishment?
Sure. So, there's certain kinds of products where getting a box in the month or a box in the mail every month is great, right? Maybe like a sample of different treats for your dog, for example. You don't really once a month is the perfect frequency for that. However, there's a variety of products that you actually are signing up for a subscription because you want to replenish that product in your home.
Right.
People can fill in the blanks. Coffee, pet food, protein powder, certain types of drinks, just consumables in general.
For purpose of the discussion, because this will be really fun, this will make my wife happy. Shampoo subscription. My wife was recently subscribed to a brand called Pros. They make custom shampoo, and she was struggling with, they kept shipping her too much, and she was trying to get less frequently, space it out. And shampoo is interesting because women have different length of hair. People use different amount of shampoo when they use their hair. So it's not like it's a one type of pill consumption. It's something that people use in different amounts. So the replenishment needs are very, very different across the board, right?
Yeah. So it's smart you brought up that you mentioned like pills, for example, because there are some consumables that you should be consuming in a very very consistent pattern. But most things are more like shampoo, where even the same individual may have variable consumption patterns. So your wife,
Right.
for example, I'm sure travels, and then even if they somehow knew exactly the speed she's going through it, like, okay, a new shampoo bottle every 42 days exactly, it's still going to drift off, right?
Right.
Or she might get a sample of something, I don't know, she goes to the hairdresser and they give her a sample of shampoo. Like there's a million reasons why the consumption could even be shifted or could speed up or slow down, change in hairstyles. So like that's also could be applicable for even something like pet food, where you think it could be relatively predictable, and it is more predictable than a lot of other things. It's still, we see people requesting our kind of subscription. We'll get to what that is for pet food a lot because of things like, okay, I took my dog to the dog park and they were hungry and they ate a lot more, or I give them wet food sometimes, or treats, or
You spill, like pet food's an example I use a lot because I as a pet owner, sometimes the bag tips over, the kids do something to it, definitely. So you can go through it more quickly than you expected all the time. And the danger with something like pet food is, unless it's very, very specific and I can only buy it in one place, that the problem is if I run out and it's a Friday, I'm gonna go stop by Petco on the way home from work or something to get the replenishment bag I need. Maybe I just gap it for when my subscription comes, but a lot of times I'm just going to buy that and cancel the subscription, and then I'm going to be getting it from somewhere else.
Oh yeah, and this is exactly perfect because I hear this all the time from subscription brands. Getting too much is getting too much product is the reason why I'm canceling. It's like the main reason why a lot of these types of subscriptions, why people cancel them. But a lot of the times, actually, what's happening is people are running out.
Right.
But they don't fill out the survey and say they ran out, because when they ran out, they bought more of that product. And then when they got the replenishment, now they have too much. Right. So, and then the other thing is when people are running out, you're missing out on revenue, of course. Mm-hmm. Right. Like if you ship something every month and they go through it in 3 weeks, you can literally increase your revenue 33%. I almost said 25%, 33%. By shipping it right when they need it. So, this is kind of like a problem that is quite general and universal across the subscription industry, and it's really a bummer. Bummer is a very unsophisticated word, but it's a bummer for the brands and the customers because these people want to connect, right?
Right.
Like people don't go to a Shopify site of a specific brand and buy a subscription from that brand because they don't care about that product, right? Like they care about that product a lot. There's a reason why they're not buying that product at the grocery store or buying something fast on Amazon or subscribe and save on Amazon, where they can just, like I would subscribe and save on Amazon for most things rather than go to a brand thing because I know it's all in one place. Right. So like if somebody's going to a brand website and subscribing, they like by definition are really, really, they care about the quality of this product specifically and they trust this company somehow. There's some real reason they want to have a connection, a long run connection with this brand, essentially. They have this intention. And then, it's actually a real bummer when I look at the statistics on like revenue retention for these brands. It literally bums me out. I'm looking at it and I'm going, man, I mean, you tell me, but my understanding is like a 35% revenue retention in month 12 is really good.
Yeah.
And
it is
like, these are all
I would say it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Really good would be higher than that. But yeah, 35% after 12 months it's pretty good. It's
good. Okay. And maybe even if we say 45% is really good. That is still that is a bummer, man, because these people, all of them want, like they
a year later, you've lost more than half your subscribers a year later. Yep.
A year is a blink of an eye for these kinds of products. For like, you're not churning out of a pet food subscription or a protein powder subscription. Well, maybe protein powder because you thought you were going to be exercising when you didn't, but that's a bad example. But for most of these products, like the shampoo thing, like your wife is not going to be changing her shampoo brand.
She doesn't want to. She'd love to find the one that she can stick with for as long as possible because it works for her. Yep.
Yeah, and if she signed up for the subscription, she likes that brand. She wants it. Right. And a 40% retained revenue is just like, it's kind of like people are used to it, but in my opinion, it's like you could do like you could do so much better. The natural churn on that for people no longer wanting the product is probably only like 20%. Like I believe these subscriptions should retain at 80%. Or better.
Okay.
So
outlining the problem. No, absolutely. Outlining the problem. I think anybody listening to this is either experiencing this or familiar with this. I think we've kind of laid out some of that. So that's setting the stage. So tell me about that in relation to the genesis of Bottomless and how you started that.
Okay. So
and what it is ultimately. We can get into that too whenever you'd like.
People are probably wondering. We're mind readers, Matthew.
Everyone listening to this already knows.
Yeah, we know that's what they think because we're mind readers. We spy on people, like we binoculars, and we check on how often they use their shampoo, and we replenish it. Okay, so the genesis of the solution that we came up with was really just this problem, right? Like we had signed up for some subscriptions ourselves, and we had this problem, and canceled the subscriptions and thought like, oh man, like classic, like there has to be a better way. Like I want to connect to this brand. And like, I don't want to be buying the grocery store alternatives right now and finding myself in the grocery store buying it. So we went through like a lot of thought experiments about like, how would you solve this problem? And we thought about chatbots. Okay, that's something that like I as a consumer don't really want to do. I don't want like some automated message to me that I'm going to have to reply. For certain kinds of products, sure. I'm a fan of like Fellow Drops, for example, where they are dropping you like weekly, like really cool coffees you can opt into. But so I'm not saying I don't believe in other ways of solving this problem, but we didn't think chatbots would work. There was a computer vision idea we thought about a lot, and then just you can't see inside of packaging like for dog food or like your shampoo. Like, well, shampoo is a great example. You imagine a computer vision replenishment for your shampoo? Nobody would do that. So we eventually came to this idea like that you could actually replenish pretty easily if you knew the weight of the product.
Okay.
It was just kind of like an intuition, and at the same time we had seen dash buttons from Amazon. It was obviously an inspiration from a technical level.
Right.
I remember seeing those and thinking nobody's going to click that thing. Like that's like a new habit, but cool that you could make this for like $5. So what if you made something like that could press itself? How would that work? And then we combine that with the idea that weight is a good source of truth. And long story short, we came up with essentially a smart scale that people store their product on top of. And then it's sort of like we had to work to make the battery life be really long. So the battery life is, depending on the model, 1 to 3 years. And then, people store the product on the scale and we replenish exactly when they need it.
Do they pick like when it's getting to this close, that's when I need to get more on the way, or are you guys figuring that out too?
That's something we have learned. Our philosophy in starting this was, let's give people as few instructions as possible. And let's just try to make it seamless, because we wanted to see how people were actually going to use it and then just make the product work for them that way. And so we've observed a lot of behaviors. One thing I know for a fact is that people are very, 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 very bad at understanding how fast they go through stuff and when they need the new shipments. Right. Their intuition for it is somehow just not good. Because of that discovery in the early days of building this and servicing like beta customers, we don't even have the option to set a reordering level. It's all just our magical system is going to figure it out for you. We kind of took the Apple road in that, where like that's not a setting. We'll figure it out.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And so in addition to then the software and the scale, and so you launched a coffee company as well out of that. So I'm going to come back to the replenishment software and how that all works, but tell us a little bit more about the coffee, the marketplace, and how that started too.
Okay. So when we got started with this concept, it was a bootstrap company, and you're making hardware, you're making machine learning, there's really no universe where you work with like third parties and you come to them and say, hey, look at my 3D printed device, like give that to your customers, right? So we kind of by necessity had to go direct to consumer first with our first product. And also by necessity, we didn't want to have a lot of different sizes of devices. Every new product vertical has its own like specificities, right? So we decided, let's just pick one thing. And we thought coffee was a good place to start. So we basically went D2C with coffee and found people to drop ship the coffee for us, essentially, and created a marketplace. That was always just something that we had to do that was expedient to like make the business work from the beginning to prove the concepts. Eventually we were able to take the retention data from those initial subscribers and raise a significant amount of venture capital to really mature the product to grow. Around that time, COVID hit, and so
Yeah.
the D2C business like did extremely well for a few years without much effort on our side. So we ended up growing a pretty large marketplace with like 10,000 customers on it, getting orders,
Wow.
getting coffee replenished with
I'm,
scales.
I'm curious, were you finding that, were you selling it alongside the value of the replenishment and the convenience feature, or was it a little bit more about this is just a great coffee marketplace and oh yeah, by the way, you'll never have to worry about getting too much or too little because it'll come when you need it?
That's actually a good question. We always marketed it as like you're gonna get coffee at the right time, like when you need it, and then we're gonna match you to some like rotation of coffees. It was actually always a limitation of that business model, that we had to educate people on the product that we're selling, which was a rotation of coffees and this new replenishment model.
Right.
So we were doing that, and actually it was quite successful and continues to be quite successful. It still is running and contributing nicely to our company's bottom line. But what we found was our partners that were fulfilling the coffee, they were getting feedback from customers of theirs that they really liked our service. And they kind of like, we had a few of them actually request that we build this for them inside of their Shopify stores. So that, they didn't have to send customers to this like third-party marketplace. They could actually have the customer service or the customer experience be direct from them. So that's actually the evolution of the company, how we kind of had an idea that eventually might be the final business model.
I was going to say, was that some brilliant Trojan horse that you built? You developed a marketplace. Everybody that buys from the marketplace loves it. They go back and tell the brand that they bought it, that they need to use this software. And suddenly you're using your customers from your marketplace to drive adoption across other coffee brands.
It was all according to plan. That's right. Yeah. And implied in the question, right, was that it probably didn't happen that way. We always kind of intuited that perhaps that was not the long-term business model, but it was working so well during COVID that like, let's just run with it. And then, when you're doing a startup like ours, you always kind of have to keep your nose to the ground of like, okay, where are people going to actually pull the product from you versus you having to push the product to people. And so we did that. We basically had some like Shopify merchants ask for this, and we built integrations for them, and we're kind of surprised by the positive results. So I'll be honest, like I like to tell people this, like I actually resisted this for like a while. I told people inside the company that I didn't want to do the Shopify integrations because I was worried that we would just cannibalize existing subscription. Right.
Right.
So I was like, it's not a good idea. Let's not go in that route. But people were asking, and so eventually I kind of relented. And that's actually the true story. And eventually, when we did it, we were keeping a very keen eye. Okay, are we growing the pie of subscription signups? And then the people that are getting the scale, are they actually buying a lot more product? And we found that both of those were true. Kind of to my surprise.
Interesting.
I remember pulling up that sign up data and waiting, expecting to see that like the pie was about the same of new subscribers, and then go back to my team and go like, okay, well, cool pilot, let's move on to something else.
Because again, for people listening at home, just conceptualizing some of that, you're talking about pie because you can see how many people have scales, like physical scales of how many people are buying those. Is that what you're talking about, or when you mean that?
So let's imagine it's a Shopify brand and they're getting like 100 signups to their subscription a month, right? Just to make the math easy. I was resistant to us working with Shopify partners because I expected that after integrating our new type of subscription, they would get maybe 60 signups to their standard subscription program and 40 signups to ours, right? And so I was like, it's going to be good because the customer's going to have a better experience, but it's not going to be like obviously
transformative for the business necessarily.
Yeah, a step change immediately.
Right.
And I remember we analyzed that for those first like couple partners data, and I was expecting to see that, but what I actually saw was like maybe it was like 100, and then after integrating our tool, it would be like 90, and then ours would be like 50.
Interesting.
So quite like a 40%
I see what
increase.
you mean. So a net gain for the end user and subscribers, because I thought you were initially talking about cannibalizing the marketplace, but you mean
Oh,
for the
no.
existing brand is actually, so
Yeah.
so that's really interesting. So it's not just a great retention play, but that is actually a conversion play for a lot of these brands, that they're actually seeing an increase in overall conversions to subscribers because the scale system or the replenishment system is actually probably overcoming the fear of some people have, that they're going to end up with too much product.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. At first it was kind of puzzling to me, and I talked to some brands and they told me that they know for a fact that there are people that do the one-time purchase regularly to replenish themselves because they're fearful. And that they'll definitely go to Amazon for a faster product oftentimes because they're out. So it seems we pull in those people that want the long-term relationship but are fearful of the subscription.
Yeah, because that's the two biggest reasons people don't want to get into subscriptions is one, they feel like they're gonna forget, and so their car is gonna get charged. And the other is that they're just going to end up with too much product and that they can't make an edit or change that. Those are the two biggest fears that people have to getting into the subscription program. So you're talking about essentially eliminating the second one. They might still forget that they have it and it's on the way, but they have it sitting on a scale in their kitchen. So hopefully they're not totally forgetting about it. But yeah, so that's interesting because I think when we were initially first talking, I was thinking more along the lines of the retention play. And I know hopefully you're going to share some numbers about what that looks like, because we've talked about that offline before, but having a bonus of overcoming resistance. Cause if you see now more and more on every site, you'll see pause, skip, cancel at any time. Essentially you have all the control. You don't need to worry. You can do whatever you want. It's your guys are actually able to say does it happen if somebody just takes it off the scale? Is that pausing the subscription if somebody doesn't put a bag back on it for several days or a week, or what? Or does somebody still have to just manually go in and cancel it with the brand?
So if somebody takes the product off the scale, we will, if they leave it off the scale for long enough, we actually will reorder, because we've seen people do that behavior. Sometimes people they will actually, this goes back to when we started, we're let's just see how people use it. and people do expect that if there's nothing on the device for long enough, obviously we ignore a day or two if it's just
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Because they've thrown it away. It's an empty bag. They've thrown it away. Okay.
Yeah. Something's happened with this. And they expect the scale to magically replenish. However, if they get the replenishment and then they don't put that on the scale, then we will stop. Or if they put it on the scale and they just don't use it, then we'll stop ordering. Which is wonderful for the customer and also the brand. If somebody's dabbling with a different product, right? Like we see this in coffee quite a bit. People will have a coffee subscription. They will get coffee for Christmas. This happens a lot around the holidays. They'll get coffee for Christmas. They'll use the new coffee bag, and their subscription will essentially auto pause. Which sounds bad for the brand, but it's actually great because some people will get 5 bags for Christmas. And so they will go dark for a while. And that's a time where they would naturally cancel their subscription. But we just wait. And then the moment they start getting back into that coffee, it's starting again. And so it just gets seamless.
So many different layers to this that we had not discussed or I had thought about. I'm liking it even more and more. So yeah, I teased at this, but I would love for you to share what are some of the retention data you've seen for brands using. And again, I want to emphasize this is a software that people are subscribing to. Yeah, in fact, let's answer that question first. So this is similar to a recharge software. It's an app that people are installing on their store, right? You're not integrating with Recharge or Skio or Stay or Loop or anything. You're actually the subscription management platform and the scale, or how does that whole process work?
So the standard way people get started with us is they install an app that runs in parallel to Recharge or Skio or Stay.
Okay.
And it works fine. Right? If people choose, so there's sort of the basics. It's people have one-time purchase, subscribe and save, and then we add a third option there, which we're calling either smart subscription or subscribe by usage.
Okay.
And if people pick that, then they're just they're into our system. The subscription contract is managed by our Shopify app. we've built some nice software to handle any potential conflicts. So if people have both like a recharge and a bottomless subscription at the same time, which is not super common, but if they do, we basically we handle that really elegantly. So like when you log in, you see a account picker like Netflix, and it just helps you find where you want to go.
Okay.
That's how people start with us. To our surprise, several of our partners have actually asked us to replace their subscription. And so we've done that. It was not really our intention, but now we have sort of a full subscription suite that can replace those products. Recharge.
Can you give some brand examples, and I'll put them in the show notes of sites that are using it, so that people could just go see what it's like? Because I mean, that's very much the D2C space, is people want to see the live examples. Or should they go to your site and see?
If they go to bottomless.com, we link straight out to our partners. So that should actually go straight to them. I will list off some of the. I will list them off though. So, we started in coffee ourselves, and so our initial customers on the Shopify app have almost exclusively been coffee roasters.
Okay.
Right now, I'm actually really working hard to find people who are interested in being launch partners in new verticals, because I know for a fact this works really well for a variety of other products. And we have beta testers on like protein powder and coffee, or hydration mixes and tons of pet food and stuff like that. So if anybody's listening, you can work with Matthew. You can work with Matthew here and maybe do something. But right now it's mostly coffee. So to answer your question, the biggest one is Onyx Coffee Lab. They're kind of a well-known, widely considered to be one of the best sort of coffee roasters in the country. They're out of Arkansas. Wonderful people too. And then we also work with Black and White Coffee and Methodical out of like the Southeast. Clutch Coffee. I'm sure I'm.
Okay, no, that's a couple others. And again, we'll have the link to the show, and I'll put a link to those two sites that he mentioned. Link to Bottomless in the show notes, so people can go see the examples and see how it works. Because that's interesting. I thought it was a full replacement. I don't think I realized too that it can run in parallel, and it makes sense though. If you're starting to see stronger and stronger numbers from one option, I mean, for me as a marketer, I would certainly want to test ripping out or replacing the other software to see if I can get everybody on that, because the lifetime value would be so much higher. Of course, there'd be ways to test that or not. But again, at the same time, like, on the other hand, I'm sure there are plenty of brands that are still using both their regular subscription offer and the smart subscription, because you do want to have the option, as long as it's not too technically like difficult. And you mentioned that it's not, to be able to run them in parallel. So yeah, let's talk lifetime value then, because I know we were talking earlier about 35 being good, great, pretty good, 45. Let's talk about some of the numbers you're seeing for brands that are fixing replenishment. And again, I want to surface this to say too, if everyone that's listened to my show, part of my newsletter, I do try to stay fairly software agnostic when it comes to the different platforms. But I think that anytime we can get into specifically a problem that a platform is solving in a very unique way, I think it is worth looking at and highlighting. So while neither Michael nor I are suggesting you rip out your entire recharge suite or and stuff and start using Bottomless, it is really important to hear what we're talking about, because replenishment and people having too much product or not enough product is probably, I'd put it in the top 2 or 3 problems related to subscriptions.
And sure, yeah. I mean, I think our results are a testament to how, like, anything you can do to try to solve this problem, even if your brand is not interested in this sort of like next generation thing we're working on. Seeing our retention be so much dramatically better proves this point that you just made, right? That, hey, like, if you can do anything you can, even in software, to get the timing right, more flexible, like more timing options, or like,
right.
For example, after people skip, like maybe try to get them to do a slightly, or give them the option to extend their frequency. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll interject some data. When I worked at QPilot, we did a study a couple of years ago, and we polled, this is several hundred customers. We were looking at their data, And we saw that when a customer made 3 frequency changes, so that's they adjusted their schedule in some way, shape, or form 3 times, they had a 200% higher LTV than those that did not.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so just people going in and making 3 adjustments to their schedule over the life of their subscription imply that they were going to be around twice as long or spending twice as much over time than somebody that did not make 3 changes.
Interesting. Yeah. That's somebody who really also wants that product.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's also you can invert that also and just say the really valuable customers perhaps are needing to mess with their thing 3 times,
Right.
which is not
Well,
fun.
we call like a frequency adjustment or frequency alignment where, again, it's not like the 30 pills in a bottle thing. It might be a bag of protein powder, but everybody uses it at a different rate. What kind of system you can put in place? And we could spend time talking about that if you wanted to too, but it's sometimes it's just something as simple as, emailing people or within the portal, like, and making a suggestion, or as you said, like the skip thing. There are different features depending on the platform you're on that's going to suggest, hey, change, instead of necessarily canceling or skipping, change your frequency to this instead. Is that going to be more aligned? I love Dollar Shave Club, and this is fairly custom. A couple years ago, I went from shaving my head like all the time, and I then started doing it just a couple times a week. Call it lazy or calling it not caring as much about how I looked super smooth all the time. And I started getting stacks of extra razor replacements. And I finally went in and I was like, I want to get 1 cartridge every like 7 weeks. It's like the most random like frequency because I don't go through razors that fast. But it also has ensured that I have been on a Dollar Shave Club subscription for like, I don't know, 7 years now. Like,
Awesome.
and so, yeah, I'm not buying the razors as frequently maybe as somebody else, but I'm also not canceling because I have too many or pausing or doing some weird thing. So, okay, we've gone far afield. I keep asking this question, keep teasing
Yeah.
at it. So I'm sorry. Anybody's
Yeah, let's
listening
get
is
there.
like, get to it already.
What's the data?
What is the data looking like for brands that are using Bottomless on the retention?
Yeah, I'm like trying to figure out how I can make this another tangent. No. Okay, so the typical brand that we've worked with, their month 12 revenue retention is 36%. So I said 35%, but the actual data that we've seen so far is 36%.
Yeah.
People who've gotten the scale, it's 67%.
It's almost double.
Yeah,
that actually holds true to that. Is that what you're saying when I said 200% higher LTV for someone who makes 3 changes? Because it's like those 2 data points sound very, very similar now.
They're very similar. And this is month 12, actually.
Right. Okay, so it's not even the whole lifetime of the subscription. Yep.
We haven't, we have data from our own marketplace subscribers where I think the average, actually, I know the revenue retention at 36 months. It's mind-boggling. It's 50%.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, and I know for a fact that on a typical subscription, that's got to be under 10%. It's like probably, 5%.
Yeah.
Something like that, 5 to 10%. So that's like 5x better. Now we don't have a head-to-head comparison because we're just getting into this Shopify game. But we will have me back on in 2 years, and I'll tell you how we're doing.
Well, it's interesting too if you think again. I think for most coffee, I think is a great example. I think every industry is going to be different depending on it. But coffee is like once you've drunk it for a couple of months, you either love it or you're moving on to something else. And if you're on a brand where you can swap out to a different blend or a different flavor, like that's actually, you're going to stay on the smart subscription because you know how easy it is to manage. So that tracks. But realistically, you're talking about once somebody hits the 3, 4, 5 month mark, the issues related to product quality, whether they're using it consistently or not, like all of those things kind of like work themselves out. And it really just comes a question of, is this something I use really, really long term? The convenience factor. There's a lot of other things that go into subscription, like fatigue, things like that. But so that, I think that makes a lot of sense because you're removing one of the biggest friction points, which is really just getting it. And again, this is retention. So it's not necessarily the same value as a subscriber who got a bag of coffee every single month, their lifetime value would be higher than somebody maybe that was getting it every 2 or 3 months because they'd adjusted their frequency. But you've retained the revenue, retained that customer at a higher percent, like almost twice as high at 12 months as your customers were before that point.
Yeah. So to make clear what I mean by revenue retention, so, we're new into the subscription industry. So just to make sure it aligns with what people actually expect that to mean, I'm looking at how much revenue they got in the first month, and then how much revenue they have in month 12. So it's just a very simple calculation. Okay. So for ours, it's like 67%. And for a standard subscription, it would be, 36. So that counts people who are getting a bag of coffee every week, right? Which, they may be speeding up over time because they actually are used to having the product there all the time. And we have data on like pet food subscribers too, which is a totally different business, right? You're not going to speed up your pet
right
food because you have it, most likely. Although it's actually still possible with some of these brands, like, for example, like what we talked about, getting your supply from the grocery store, and then you're actually only using your subscription pet food half the time. If you have to go to the grocery store, if you miss the timing every time. But anyway, my point is I've looked at the revenue retention for our pet food subscribers, and it's also right around the 70%.
Okay.
12.
Okay. Yeah, I would think, people are less likely to swap out pet food for, there's definitely like different age ranges, but that makes sense. Michael, this is really, really cool. I feel like you and I could talk replenishment and retention stuff all day long. I would love, do you have in your experience, because again, I think you're fairly unique here in the fact that you've run subscriptions from a marketplace and brand standpoint, as well as developing this unique software. Do you have any other tips or ideas or strategies that you found that work to help retaining subscribers over time that you think it would be relevant for the audience to hear?
Okay, so when we first did our like beta test for coffee people, and we're sending them 3D printed scales, etc., we didn't think about variety at all. So what I did is I found like a couple local Seattle coffee brands. I put them on my shop, and like if people bought it, I would go to their site and buy it. Like it was a very bootstrap company. We had like 10 people. They didn't even know probably what we're doing. I basically was unofficially dropshipping. But my point is, I didn't need to share that detail. My point is that people, it was just products, right? So we had Cafe Vita, who's now one of our partners, and they actually have us implemented in their Shopify too. But we had Cafe Vita, and they have like a Cafe del Sol, which is like their espresso, right? And so I just had that, and people would sign up for that, and then they could only get that, right? And we were paying close attention to any churn customer at that point. If you're like painstakingly assembling hardware,
right?
Like any time you lose anyone, you're emailing them, "Hi, why did you stop drinking the coffee?" And so I know a lot about why people churn from subscriptions, just from talking to them when they leave. And one thing we found was some customers are happy with this product and they want that product all the time, but some people want a lot of variety. So we ended up actually building a rotation system to be able to rotate through a variety of coffees, and that ended up cutting down on churn for sure. We actually built a queue system inside of our platform, which is also in the Shopify too.
Okay, so people could pick like, hey, I've got this flavor right now. I'm going to like almost like old school Netflix. I'm adding, this is what I want to come. When this one runs out, this one gets shipped. And this one runs out, this one gets shipped.
Yeah, so we have both like a choose your own adventure thing like that, where you can do a Netflix style queue, or like I just want variety and you pick like a rotating. So flexible ways to allow people to kind of specify the variety. The other thing is like there also is churn that you cannot prevent at all. Like if you really are talking to these people like all the time, when they cancel, like there's churn you can't prevent. Like, okay, I want to support my local in coffee. I want to support my local coffee roaster. Like, okay, your brand lost the affinity, and now these people are a fan of another brand, right? Like, that's
Right.
has nothing to do with your e-commerce or your replenishment or whatever. They just got convinced by somebody they met that they want to support this company, and that's fine. And obviously, the best thing to do is just try to be kind and hopefully come back.
Yeah.
And there in pricing, like there's a lot of churn that's just structural, but it's not like 75% of your customers in the first year.
No, it's not. No, I think that's a great point, and that's something that I like. I pontificate about, or I get on my soapbox about it time to time. Is like, you can't make everybody happy, no matter what you do. Whether for whatever reason people are going to leave, you should try to build a simple process for letting those people go, but also potentially re-engaging with them down the road, making sure they have a positive experience, because they're still, like, regardless of the reason, they still might share about it positively or negatively because of that. But really, don't let that keep you up at night. What should be keeping you up at night is how you can keep all the other customers that love you, keep them happy, like, or happier, right? Like that should always be the focus. Is I've got this great group of customers. I want to keep giving and keep giving and keep giving because they're the ones that are paying me the most money. So
totally, it's almost like you have to tag every customer that's going to be leaving, whether you know about them or not, into like avoidable or unavoidable churn. And the unavoidable, like all you can do is just try to leave on a good note, which is like not making it impossible for them to cancel.
Yeah, it was so interesting because I was talking to a supplement company, and they said something along the lines of that, based on clinical research, their product works for 2 out of 3 people that take it. And so, and they actually kind of tell people that, like, this works for about 2 out of 3 people that try it. So if it doesn't work for you, let us know. And they literally give you an instant refund. If you say, hey, this doesn't working, I'm not feeling anything, I don't think it's working for me, boom, refund. You don't need to send anything back. There's nothing fancy. We clinically know this won't work for everyone. And I thought that was pretty fascinating to think about that. Like, hey, like, this isn't for everybody. We know that, but we'd like you to try and see if it works for you. Is an interesting way to think about it. Micheal, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think anybody who's interested in learning more about what we've been talking about, you can check them out at bottomless.com. Micheal and I connected initially on LinkedIn off of a subscription post or something at some point a while ago. You can certainly connect with him there. Is there anything else about you'd like anybody to know listening today about you or Bottomless, Micheal?
I can't think of anything.
Okay.
I was very excited to come on the show and talk about what we are doing. I really appreciate the opportunity to spread the word. Yeah. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, you're welcome. Thank you. I think this kind of innovation, it's pretty amazing. Again, we're in a really interesting time where there are other subscription apps. They're all trying to innovate, trying to build features that brands need. And you've gone like a hardware route as well, which I think is very, very different, but I think is really compelling. And honestly, we've been hearing about the Internet of Things for so long now, but you're literally like leading the charge of what that looks like. So that's really, really
cool. Somehow, I guess one thing we didn't talk about was like, we're not making people buy these devices.
Oh, you're not?
Which I think is very important to the story. Like, there's no way we would actually have like an incremental improvement in subscription signups if we like no consumer woke up this morning and thought, I want to buy a device to replenish.
It's just something they get as part of the program.
Yes. So that's one of the insights that we did, and I don't know why I wanted to throw that in at the end because I was thinking.
No, it's good. I should have asked that. I should have asked that earlier, but honestly, that sounds like the lifetime value like more than compensates for the cost of the device for doing that.
Yeah, and so we make that up in a commission over time whenever the scale like generates an order, and so then we eventually make back the cost of hardware, but we basically finance that for the customer and the brand.
That's really cool.
Just to throw that in there. But anyway, you were complimenting what we do, so continue.
No, I'm sorry. I was actually dead complimenting. But no, again,
you were done.
It's great,
that was it.
great to have you on the show. It's been really fun talking with you. And for anyone listening, please stay tuned for next week's dose of Subscription Prescription.
That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.